Welcome, everybody. This is the Business of Law and Leadership Innovation Future of Firms panel of Arzmone Legal Fest. And welcome, everybody, and especially welcome for our panelists, Kristóf Ferenczi, firm managing partner at Kinstellar, and Andrea Gritsch, managing partner at Wolf Theiss. And the topic is super interesting. And I have so many questions, and I am sure that also the people listening to us will have a lot of questions, so I don't want to waste more time. So I would just jump in and start with the warm-up question. So I would like to ask you to tell us about the beginnings. How has your career path evolved, and what pivotal moments led you to your current leadership role in the legal industry?
Should I give it a start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, super. Well, personally, I've always been interested in a lot of things. I considered after school studying mathematics. I considered studying chemistry, languages, and, you know, often as it goes, if you can't decide on one thing, you start out with the law. That's what I did. I also studied in parallel international business administration, both in Austria and in the UK. And eventually I ended up in court, and I thought the profession is a really interesting one. However, the court system is not for me because it's very, it's very traditional. So I shopped around a little bit and eventually found a law firm that suits me very well, which is my current law firm, Wolf Theiss. And there I started out as an M&A and transactional lawyer, and eventually, you know, doing a lot of transactions, being active across the borders, being integrated with different practices and different countries, clients all over the world. You assume more and more responsibility, especially managerial responsibility. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm a managing partner. We are a team of 4 managing partners at Wolf Theiss. And I do like a lot sort of this mix between, on the one hand, advising clients in international and global transactions, and on the other hand, collaborating internally and bringing the firm forward. That's essentially for me.
Great, thanks. From my side, there are certain similarities, I guess, between some of the things that led us to these roles. I've been exposed to quite a bit of international experiences during my youth, and quite some change. In fact, I grew up in Hungary and obviously saw the fall of the communist regime first-handedly at the time. And then after the borders opened up, I won an international scholarship and studied for 2 years in Italy at an international school. And at the time, I was mostly interested in literature and humanities, but finally decided to study law. It just seemed like a pragmatic choice. And during my university years, I was mostly interested in business law, which has also led me to take a postgraduate scholarship in France, where I studied French commercial law in Strasbourg, and having picked up a number of languages over the years and having conducted these international studies, I have thought that it would be best to put the international experience on the academic scene and the languages to use in an international environment. So after Strasbourg, I applied to international law firms back in Budapest, and I had joined Linklaters in 2001, which at the time just entered the CE region. And it was a highly demanding, but I would say very formative environment where, you know, the firm's very high standards, collaborative culture, and strong emphasis on training really shaped the way I was thinking about my future there. And whilst initially I had started off as a corporate M&A lawyer, I had grown interested more in what we could call regulated industries. It was partly driven by some of the market changes at the time. So I got involved with the acquisition of the largest mobile operators in Hungary and learned a lot about the telecom sector, then moved on to the railways sector, where we advised some of the rail transport operators. And it was a period when on the EU side, there was a lot of regulatory reform coming online, with very similar mechanisms that actually led me eventually to the energy sector, which has become my area of specialty. In part, it was fascinating for me, not only because of the legal part of it, but also because of many field studies that we did with clients. And I really appreciated working closely together with the client side and their experts. And so when in 2008, Linklaters pulled out of the CE region, we had established as a spin-off firm from Linklaters, our current firm, Kinstellar. And I was asked to lead the firm's energy law practice, which we have built out across the firm. It was a very collaborative and multi-jurisdictional exercise at the time, which involved a lot of going around the offices, working together, having workshops with the local teams as well. And ultimately, I was doing that job for quite some time. And along the way, I was asked to move into certain management roles. I was first on the firm's management committee, as one of the members. Then I had been asked to take over the management of the Budapest office. And after that, at the beginning of last year, I have become the managing partner of the firm. Obviously have a team around me of professionals and the firm management committee. But as managing partner, it's a job that I fill in, and it's actually quite demanding. So after some efforts and tries at the beginning of the year, I have decided and agreed with our clients that I will focus solely on this, and therefore that's what I'm doing now.
That's so interesting. I mean, I see some patterns in both your experiences, like a lot of curiosity, interest in the clients, and love for cooperation with the experts, and interdisciplinarity and cross-border experiences. But what are the most critical leadership qualities for navigating today's increasingly complex environment? What would you say?
Well, I think, it's a very complex world. It's fast moving. It has a lot of shades to it. We see a lot of changes on the macroeconomic level, on the geopolitical level. So I think a strategic focus is really very much important. At the same time, you need to stay flexible, adaptable, and be also pragmatic. You need to be able to navigate at short notice address the challenges that arise from time to time and seek the opportunities in changing situations. I think what's also important is emotional intelligence, empathy, the human touch to leadership. It's very much important to stay on eye level, to really, pull up the sleeves and go down to work, meet people where they are, regardless whether they are in the legal team, whether they are in the business professional team, and really be approachable at all times. I think that's probably the most important features. At the same time, we also need to stay true to our profession. It's a very traditional profession. However, it's changing and it's evolving. So building a bridge between the tradition of the legal industry, of the legal profession, into a transforming world. So to say, let tradition and transformation meet is probably also key for future success.
I would tend to agree with most of what Andrea mentioned. I think these are all very important elements of our jobs. At the same time, I would say that some of the aspects of what we do as leaders of international law firms is not fundamentally different from the way that other multi-jurisdictional companies, leaders or CEOs operate. It does involve having a strategic vision and knowing where you want to take the organization, which also requires being a structured thinker and being able to convince and bring together with you and your vision the team around the whole firm and the whole business, including both the legal professionals and the other business services professionals. And it does involve a lot of empathy and good communication skills. But I agree that adaptability has a very important role to play. being able to quickly assess, evaluate, and sometimes respond to changing circumstances. Just thinking about things like, the COVID, which has hit everyone at a pace that was unprecedented, and other similar situations, while also keeping in mind the longer term direction and the vision you want to implement. These are all quite important. And as much as indeed law firms have a lot of traditions behind them, I think it's also about being a people business. So much of what we do involves building trust and consensus across very, very diverse teams and cultures. And I think that's a point of similarity between our firms, and Wolf Theiss is definitely a firm we very highly appreciate and value as one of our key competitors. And the diversity and the cultural differences across the teams is something we have to respect and embrace. And it also involves being a good listener very often, and ensuring fairness and transparency along the way. And obviously, what we do involves a lot of teamwork all over the place. So you do have to be a leader who is equally a team player, which makes it all the more interesting from my perspective.
Yeah, thank you. So, a lot of qualities. But I find interesting that Andrea also mentioned the evolving regulatory frameworks, and you mentioned the long-term vision and its importance in leadership. And nobody can deny that nowadays the regulatory frameworks are changing rapidly. So how do you ensure your team stay ahead and compliant across all these jurisdictions?
Well, on the one hand, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You want to go ahead, Kristóf? No, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, from my perspective, I think there are two aspects to this, really. One concerns the regulatory environment around law firms, and the other one is the business environments in which our clients operate. And as concerns the law firm's regulatory landscape, that's a challenge in itself, especially for firms like ours that are multi-jurisdictional. Kinstellar right now operates in 12 countries, and the rules in those 12 countries around law firms are, I would say, designed for establishments and law firms that are predominantly local, operating more as traditional partnerships. And there is a bit of a gap between those kind of more traditional rules regulating law firms and the actual developments in the legal services industry, which has very much over the years become a professional business. It's a professional service provider business, which also has to adopt and follow the client needs that are changing over time. So navigating in that landscape is quite challenging oftentimes. And if you add on top of that some of the more recent regulatory regimes around GDPR and AML KYC rules, coupled with the needs that stem from implementing new technologies that bring additional layers of complexity to compliance. At Kinstellar, we have a very robust internal risk and compliance function that oversees and services basically the entire firm, and implements our very strict principles of compliance and professional integrity, which are obviously core values at our firm. And this does help navigate in the regulatory landscape, so to speak. It is also worth noting that in various parts of the world, there are what I would call welcome developments, including in the UK or in certain parts of the US, where there are new alternative legal structures that have been adapted to the legal services industry. And in certain parts of the world, there are even new waves of investments that have an impact in how law firms operate. In the broader context of the business environment of our of our clients, that is indeed a very rapidly changing landscape. But that, I think, in many ways does create a lot of business opportunities for law firms. As a matter of fact, when major regulatory changes happen, we see a very strong demand for our services. And the way we try to respond to that and stay ahead of the game is partly about it takes a lot of investment in a strong learning and development function in the firm that helps with this kind of continued learning and knowledge sharing as well across the firm. The way we are set up is along sector teams and firm-wide service lines, and there is a very constant flow of information and indeed shared knowledge where we train our colleagues across offices and across practice teams. So that kind of cross-border collaboration within the firm is essential in terms of not only being able to adapt to the changing regulatory environment, but to actually anticipate changes and align across the firm. And there is a lot of dialogue that happens not only with our clients, but also with the regulators on our markets, obviously on absolutely professional grounds. And that also involves from time to time, and depending on certain jurisdictions, us getting involved and being asked to help shape some of the regulation when it comes to novel areas that become more regulated. And that's actually part of what our risk and investigations practice is also involved in, which in recent times has been really active and busy with complex risk assessment, sanctions regimes, and the like that come with the developing landscape around us.
Yeah, I would totally echo what you just said. I would maybe add 2 layers when it comes to the client advice. I mean, legal expertise is key, but that's a given. For a law firm, a tier 1 law firm, that's what clients anyway expect. I think where we really add value is beyond the black letter advice. When things go really south or are becoming increasingly difficult because there is a new piece of law, there is a new regulation upcoming, a truly tier 1 law firm offers additional skills like risk mapping, like scenario planning, like even digital tools. So becoming a real partner beyond the mere service provider. That's what I would add for the client angle. And for the internal angle, fully agree. I think what's very important is also to play our strengths. You guys have 12 offices. We have 13 offices. We operate quite similarly. There's a headquarter with central functions, but the experts are really on the ground in each country. We do have EU jurisdictions and non-EU jurisdictions. We have countries that have the euro and countries that have local currency. So, of course, there is a lot of diversity. We need and we should rely on the expertise of our local colleagues in each and every country, while at the same time also draw on the advantages that the global organization can give you, the headquarter functions, the knowledge sharing, and the collaboration. And ultimately, I think the entire topic of compliance, it has grown in the past many years. It will continue to grow. And staying abreast of all the developments it's more than process, it's culture. It is how embedded in your firm ethics and values are. And then I think it just comes naturally. And the firm functions support those developments.
I would definitely agree with that. And indeed, there are many similarities there. The one aspect which is a little bit special in our organization is that we actually don't have a headquarter office. I would love to say it was a strategic decision, but that's not exactly true. It's just how we had evolved, because at the time when we had set up Kinstellar, as a spin-off from Linklaters, it just happened that we had 4 offices, and we didn't want to allocate the responsibility of a central headquarter office to any of them. And then we kind of realized that it works for us. We do have the central business services functions. We have the central management team. but it's composed of people from different offices, different backgrounds, which over the last 16 plus years has proven quite kind of both agile, as well as it has brought to us kind of what we have found to be a helpful diversity of views and experiences. But other than that, I do agree with the perspective that you mentioned, which is very, very similar, I would say, in our firm as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see that you are very well prepared for the challenging presented by the regulatory advancement. But how do you see that? Does this new regulatory pressure created also new business opportunities that you can turn into competitive advantages?
For sure, I think that's what Kristóf was already alluding to. It's a lot of new legal fields. The consequences of not complying with the laws are in parts draconic. I mean, just reading today's news, competition law violations can lead to hundreds of millions of euros damages and fines. So, but not only in those extreme cases, it's building a sustainable and reliable business does require at the client end a lot of expert advice. It requires a lot of understanding what the law says, how it functions, but also where it is developing. And for that reason, professions like data specialists, data protection specialists, IT experts, but also compliance experts in the broader sense, be it early investigations, be it really proceedings in front of authorities, be it asset tracing specialists, all of that are developing and kind of new fields of law. And they are come to stay. So I don't see much of that going away in the near future.
I can just resonate that and say basically that our experience has been very similar. Clients are definitely very closely aware of the implications of compliance and non-compliance as well. And it's been interesting to see, for example, how when it comes to the screening of business opportunities or due diligence exercises, how the top priority topics in due diligences have shifted over the years. I mean, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and compared to previous times, for example, environmental compliance issues really dominate the priority topics in due diligences, and other compliance aspects as well, including competition law and others. And so much so that when we've been designing our sector approach in the firm, we have consciously decided to move into certain areas that are very compliance heavy, and where the regulatory pressures that you mentioned, Bori, are very dominant, I would say. Say, for example, in the life sciences and healthcare sector, where we have a strong sector activity, or the energy space as well, the regulatory aspects and being really on top of those key challenges on the regulatory front are very important. But also, you know, when in recent times you see a lot of sudden changes, you know, leaving aside the pandemic, which has led to, I think, for most law firms around the globe, very intense period of work and trying to figure out how to comply with all the rules that have come with the pandemic-driven changes across our countries. If you think about even more recent times, when the global economy is from almost one day to another set on a new footing by, you know, the wide-ranging U.S. tariffs, and how you adapt to that, and how you handle supply chain issues, and how you navigate around that fast-changing environment, create a lot of interesting work for law firms. And I think that's an important aspect that actually I think both of our organizations can offer to to the young generations and aspiring lawyers as well, that I think in our firms, when these changes happen, we really try to adopt as fast as possible, and that creates a lot of novel issues to be handled by our teams to help our clients really navigate those challenges more efficiently.
Yeah, thank you. So besides the regulatory compliance, nowadays the other big challenge is the technological advancement and AI. So I would like to ask you, what role does AI currently play in your daily legal work, and when do you see the greatest potential or threat in the next 5 years?
Well, of course, no discussion goes by without touching AI. That's very clear. I think AI is a very powerful tool. It can already achieve a lot. When it comes to the legal profession, what I would say is that it's quite reliable, supporting lawyers in document review, of course, in due diligence exercises, in legal research, and even in drafting standard documents. That works quite well. It is today, I would say, a force multiplier. It enables you to be fast. It enables you to tackle complex situations, especially in our setting, cross-border, cross-jurisdictions, many practice areas involved, be it corporate law, employment law, be it regulatory laws, be it finance or any other kind of law affected by a transaction. So that certainly gives us a multiplying effect. I think the greatest potential still looking ahead is harvesting the opportunities that AI might generate in terms of predictability, analytics, and outcome forecasting. At some point that might be in the cards. However, already today, it is quite a powerful tool. Having said that, what it requires is understanding what it can and cannot do, and also a lot of learning in how to apply it, because it's more than the common ChatGPT prompt. Can you please find out where is the nearest restaurant that has the greatest pizza? It really requires also here learning and development on how to generate results that truly help.
I would very much agree with that. I think drawing the line between what the real use cases are for a law firm like ours and for our clients of the Gen AI and new legal tech tools is a major task, and it's a constantly evolving landscape, because the legal tech and Gen AI tools of the beginning of this year just know certain things, and the tools and their level of knowledge a year from now will be different, and who knows where they will really take the industry 5 years down the line. The pace at which these tools develop is immense. It's I think quite, one could say it's even overwhelming to try to figure out how many new AI-driven tools are developed every day, every week. And so one of the challenges that we have is, I think, not to be driven by the huge variety of tools out there, but rather defining what the use cases are that we will want to apply these tools to. And beyond that aspect, I think looking ahead, I do see, and obviously it's not only me, I've been talking about it to various developers and experts as well. There will be foreseeable impacts on how law firms and professional services firms actually operate, and how our business models will be impacted. Because if we take as examples what I thought are very accurate examples that Andrea gave about where law firms normally use today the Gen AI and legal tech tools, which is very similar to our experience, it may have an impact on, for example, some of the tasks that traditionally over the last 1 or 2 decades, for example, trainee lawyers or junior associates would have spent quite some time on, drafting some of the less complex documents and agreements, dealing with some of the even legal translation and legal research tasks. Some of that can and probably will be fulfilled in part by these Gen AI and legal tech tools. And that could, on one level, lead to an approach of, well, taking on maybe less junior resources. But of course, this is a double-edged sword, because at the same time, as has always been the case, the trainee lawyers and the new junior associates are the workforce of tomorrow. And so you need to ensure that there is room for the new generation, not only to become part of our organizations, but to be trained up in the best way. And of course, training and learning and development is another area where these tools can also have an impact. But importantly, and that's a slightly different area, but I do believe that there will be a further impact on the law firm's business models, partly because technology, and that's an aspect that maybe we don't necessarily speak about that much, but technology is pretty expensive today. The Gen AI tools, the legal tech applications that have been developed, it's a fairly significant investment by professional services firms like law firms to take on board. So there's kind of the expense side of it, but there's also the other side of it, which is if you can more efficiently perform some of these tasks that we talked about in less time or in almost no time, then the traditional time-based pricing model of law firms is definitely challenged. But it's not only about that, because there's been a lot of talk about the death of the hourly rates that law firms, especially international law firms, tend to apply, which actually hasn't happened. But it's partly about the use of resources and where you use technology versus where you use human capacity to perform different tasks. So from my perspective, the next couple of years will be about finding that combination and using technology and our people in a complementary manner, and embracing that developing landscape there, and being conscious about how that may have an impact on the composition of team structures, as well as adjusting our pricing models to that. And it will be difficult for me to tell exactly how that will look like in 5 years, but I think it's fair to say it will be different than how it is today.
Yeah, I see. This sounds really complex. So you mean that the responsibilities and skill sets for a future leader are also evolving, right? Because of the changes.
Well, I would think so. Certainly, a law firm leader of 10 years ago probably has had to spend less time on discussing internally, liaising with outside service providers and listening to what new solutions there are on the technology front. So tech savviness has certainly been added to our plethora of skills and requirements for a law firm leader. But I think fundamentally it will still remain that kind of balancing act between managing diverse cross offices, cross-cultural and cross-generational teams. Because I think in addition to the technology change and this legal tech revolution that is really happening out there, and just one kind of side note there are certain events like the Legal Tech Talk event in London. Last year, there were a couple of hundreds of participants, and I know we were one of the sponsors, and I understand there will be a couple of thousand participants this year. So that just gives you a flavor for it. But beyond the technology kind of aspects and the changes there, I think there's a lot happening on the generational front as well. I think our teams across the firm have become more diverse, and less homogeneous, if you will. And there are different kind of groups within the team in terms of the newer generation coming in with slightly changing preferences and different expectations when it comes to the pace of work, the feedback they seek, or how they absorb new ideas and new technology and what they expect in terms of what a firm can offer. So I think on the leadership front, you do have to try to adapt not only to the very clearly changing aspect of how we operate from the operations perspective, but also having that ability to help the organization grow according to those changing preferences as well. And I think remaining curious and open on the leadership level as well to all the novelty that this brings into the organization, I think are also important part of what we do.
I would pick up on that. I would say it's probably most important to be genuinely invested in people, to really be very perceptive, be approachable, as I already mentioned before, build that into your strategy. In addition to being, of course, a technologist and fluent in data, that's very clear. I think the future leaders, it's very different to the past. It's more about being on top of this entire ecosystem. It's about connecting the dots. It's being emotionally intelligent and strategically direct, because ultimately what we want to be is profitable, and we need to seek out all the success factors that help us getting there.
Thank you. That's super interesting how this balancing the human side and the technology side and the awareness and complexity between all the countries a leader has to balance. And both of you mentioned the new requirements from the new generation. And I think it is something which might be super interesting topic for our listeners. So I would like to ask you about your recruitment and talent development practices. How do you adapt this to the new generation's requirements and the modern age?
Well, I think this is probably one of the most difficult areas, because Kristóf and I, we can probably only guess what is important for the next generation, because we're the generation ahead, really. So I'd be very interested also to hear from the audience what they think and what they are truly interested in when looking towards a law firm or a potential job in the legal profession. What I can only assume, talking to a lot of younger people and also hearing what our HR department and others say, is that young talent seem to value autonomy, purpose, impact, and that's what we would like to address. We want to offer really an individual path. It doesn't have to be you need to be in the office all day long in order to eventually become a partner, if that's not what you wanted. We do offer a lot of personal training and development programs that are really designed according to each person's individual preferences and also abilities. There is not the one and only type of lawyer, because people are diverse. Some have a talent for the technical stuff, others have a talent for driving a deal. So you need to be really open and flexible and support all of them. What we have, of course, is what any bigger law firm has. We do have part-time models, we have hybrid work models, we have secondment programs, we have digital skills training, we have the concept of lifelong learning in our firm. But all of that goes without saying. I think what is most important is to attract the highest potentials, to draw them in, to engage them, to make them interested, and then to make them feel responsible also. Because the most valuable team members are those that feel responsibility for their task, for their team, and a little bit also for the firm, and have an interest in bringing along the collective sort of endeavor to something that is great. They need to be enthusiastic and motivated and really pull along in the team. And I think sort of that's the ever-staying challenge, to keep people really engaged and keep them motivated along the various stages of their lives. Because of course we realize that preferences and priorities change. For instance, for me, before joining Wolf Theiss, I've worked 2 jobs because I was so eager to learn and develop. And of course, also at Wolf Theiss, I worked a lot of hours, and eventually I decided to have a family. And having an organization that allows for that gives you time and also supports you in that stage of your life, while not putting you at a disadvantage. For instance, I was made partner during maternity, so I wasn't even working when my firm made me partner. That is a great benefit, and that goes for male and female team members alike. So there are many situations that we need to be open and flexible.
I would pick up on 2 particular elements of what Andrea said, because they are very much on top of my mind as well. One is that we have clearly moved beyond having a single linear career path that would be kind of a fit for all in the organization. I think it's an absolute necessity to have a lot of flexibility in the organization. And I have this program under which I go around all the offices of the firm on a regular basis, kind of being a managing partner on the go, as we call it. And I make sure that I sit down with the whole team in the offices, and I take questions from them and trying to understand how their preferences evolve, what they expect from the firm, and how we can actually adapt to what makes sense for the overall business and for the overall organization. And I do keep on saying on these occasions, as well as when we hold a lot of kind of town hall type of virtual meetings in the firm, that flexibility is not just a buzzword. We need to find different avenues for people to be able to contribute value and to find a win-win between the organization's needs and considerations, as well as the individual's needs, whether it's hybrid arrangements, whether it's flexibility around working time, flexibility for people with younger families, or flexibility in other respects. We also, as I'm sure other firms like Wolf Theiss also do, allow people to take some time off and then return to the firm. And we very often actually have people who have moved into, for example, a client organization after having worked some time with a given client, and then they come back to the firm. And so we don't believe in burning bridges, but rather offering flexibility from all these different angles, because I'm a strong believer in the fact that there are different ways and different channels and avenues in which people can add really value for the firm, and in which we can support them to do that. It's not necessarily dissimilar to, for example, what's been happening not only in COVID times, but, for example, as some of the audience may know, we do have a significant operation still in Kiev. We have an operating office in Ukraine. And obviously there, we also had to make sure that not only we try to protect our people as much as it was possible in the circumstances, but offer them, relocation possibilities and different ways of working and contributing to the firm, irrespective of where they work from, whether in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. And ultimately, I think it is about understanding that the law firm of today, and especially the law firm of tomorrow, is a flexible organization from an operational, a cultural, a diversity, and a career path flexibility perspective as well, which really, I think, in many ways echo what Andrea also mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to also encourage the audience, because Andrea also mentioned that we are also very welcoming for their input, but also if they have any questions to the panelists, because I have a lot of more questions, but I don't want to totally monopolize the opportunity. So you can send your questions in the Q&A or chat section, And in the meantime, I mean, I am so amazed to see this flexibility and adaptability in the industry. It changed so much since the beginning when I was a trainee lawyer like 10 years ago. And it is just, I just wonder that how do you cultivate a culture of innovation in this very traditional profession driven by precedents and risk aversion and hierarchy?
Well, I think I think probably we have quite similar things to offer. It's you mentioned it already. It's about a culture. You need to create a culture of innovation. It's not a project that you can assign to somebody, but it's a process that needs to be embedded in the entire firm. Having said that, I'm gonna also say that we created a department whose core competence and core responsibility is to innovate constantly. So those team members' tasks is day in and out to just be around the organization and think and rethink and suggest and come up with new ideas and really disrupt us as a firm, which is inconvenient, I have to say. At times, because it's very challenging and, you know, it nags you on your back when you have to do a lot of work and then all of a sudden you should rethink how you work. But that's sort of that's what's necessary, I think. Never rest on past laurels. Always look ahead and see what's possible and where you might move next. And I think you mentioned it a couple of times already. The legal industry is a quite traditional industry. It's very, you know, it goes back a long time and it has its routines and its established ways of working. And but we don't have to look at the legal industry for, you know, giving us ideas. We can look ahead into other industries and see what they do and what they do best and also learn from them.
It's a very intriguing idea indeed. I will consider that, having a separate internal function of positive disruptors. But indeed, I think it is really important to want to experiment in the organization. And I think for us, it's been behind much of what we've been doing in developing our sectors. And a number of our sector teams, which really focus on various industries and their development and what is really driving the business of our clients there, has been based on let's try and let's see what we can build up there and how we will succeed. But it's as long as it's just a slogan, innovation wouldn't happen. And the point I would like to bring in there is basically not being afraid of failing. And that actually takes leadership to be vocal about not everything, you know, just becomes a success, and acknowledge when something goes south and you know, not be afraid of calling it what it was. It might not have succeeded. And we just had a particular issue in our organization. We launched a new tool. And we realized that we would have needed to do it slightly differently. So I had to take the executive decision, if you will, to call it back and say it in front of the entire firm. Well, actually, we didn't get it right the first place. And it's okay on a certain level to experiment and then say, well, we didn't get it right. Let's try it differently and go for it, having learned our lessons there. So it's partly about, you know, hierarchy, not being a blocker and not being invested in, you know, a hierarchical structure that would really become an impediment to having a culture of innovation, as Andrea also mentioned. But to me, it's also about being able to stand in front of our team and say, we got to try it again and differently, and not being afraid of sometimes things not working out, and rather propagating that approach of experimenting, which does come with failure, and it shouldn't come with kind of a blaming approach, which never helps and it doesn't lead anywhere, but rather this kind of encouraging and empowering attitude, which really has to come as much from the top as it has to be ingrained in basically in all ranks of the organization.
Wow, that's so impressive. I mean, these cultural shifts and the innovation department. I mean, and that you are learning from different industries. I would love to learn more, but in the meantime, we also get questions from the audience. So I would like to ask their question now. What do you value most in your team, and particularly in your management team?
That's a good one. Good question. I keep saying to the various members of our management team that we really don't want to have an echo chamber. We need differences of opinions, and being able to be very upfront and honest with each other, and being able to say if something doesn't go in the way that it should go. That's one part of kind of value creating in a management team. Another aspect to that is having the ability to discuss even things that look established practices or an established approach, and say, well, just because we've done something in a particular way in a changing environment, in changing circumstances, we may actually want to look at it from a different perspective and do it maybe completely differently. And I think every organization has this tendency of creating new processes and using different systems, but to be able to say, let's take a break and let's look at it with a fresh pair of eyes is really important, and anyone in the team who does that really creates value through that. And the last bit I would mention is just being very humane and being really good people in the team that hear the organization and they are open to the voices in the organization, I think is really important in today's environment.
I'd add on that and say the members in the management team, they need to like each other. They need to understand each other. They need to have a more or less shared vision and be motivated to achieve a good outcome as a team. And at the end of the day, don't overcomplicate it. Don't jump on any new trend or try to reinvent the wheel every time. Also build a little bit on the history of the firm. What can the firm do really well? Who are the contributors to that? How can we also share responsibility with other team members in our organization and really work together as a big team towards the future success? I think that's very, very key also to be pragmatic and to be realistic and to be outcome driven.
Thank you. Thank you. We have like 6 more minutes. So I would take the opportunity to ask about the future, because it is now subject to a lot of these questions. And I would like to ask you that how would you describe the leading international law firm in 10 years from now? What would be its defining characteristics?
Well, I think probably it's summarizing a lot what we've said today. It's about being agile. It's about being digital first. That includes, of course, cutting edge technology, but also data-driven insight. Really know what you want and how you're going to achieve your goals, what you're doing. And at the same time, balance all of that with the human factor. Really be client obsessed, more or less. Because a law firm's biggest asset is the trust the clients put into the lawyers and the value they add in achieving a solution, in helping anticipate and solve a problem, and really adding value to a situation. And this client obsession, this human factor, the relationship focus, I think besides the data and technology, this is really the key factor for future success in a law firm 10 years from now.
I would fully buy into that vision for the law firm of the future. What I would add to that is I think the way we work together with clients will also change and develop over these 10 years, partly driven by technology. There will be more collaborative collaborations really with clients as well. So the client obsession not only I think means, from my perspective, being very focused on really understanding the client's industries and the sectors they work in, and the drivers and the main factors that impact their businesses, but also the way the law firms will tap into the client's organization's functioning will be different through technology. At the same time, just reflecting back on the point I talked about earlier about how the law firm models will also evolve in this next period in terms of defining what is done by technology, what tasks are performed by the humans, by the lawyers as opposed to the machines, will actually shape how the law firm organizations look. I think the human driven work will really focus on the value-added parts in terms of the interactions with the clients, because clients will, in my view, want to rely on their trusted advisors, which is very much our ambition to be for every client in every jurisdiction where we operate. And they will want to seek the trusted advisors' views on the more complex issues. And that will shape not only the organization, not only the collaboration, but also the pricing models and the way we function together with the client's organizations, a couple of years down the line.
Thank you. I'm just saying to the audience that we have 3 minutes left, so if they have more questions, then they can send it now, or the opportunity will be over. But for my last question, I would like to ask something really, really interesting for a lot of people from the audience, I'm sure. So what do you think? What should young lawyers and law students focus on if they aspire to lead in the next era of global legal practice?
From my perspective, it's a combination of things. There is no single focus that I would recommend. Obviously, understanding the role of technology and data in the law firm environment will be very important. But beyond those kind of more obvious aspects, I think remaining curious along your career, having and keeping a desire to experiment and try new things and new approaches will be very important. And beyond hard work, engaging with clients in ways in which you can really understand their also evolving needs will be extremely important. So if anyone aspires to be one of the drivers of law firms of the future, it is going to be a fundamentally complex task, probably even more complex than it is today. All the multicultural aspects, the multi-generational changes, the technology changes will have to be driven through with openness, curiosity, and the mindset that accepts that there is a constant change that drives your clients, your organization, your people's perspectives. And rather than being a rigid organization, you have to lead your team and everyone in the firm with you into the next period with this curious, engaging, and experimenting mindset.
And adding to that, it's a marathon. So you need a lot of motivation, a lot of energy, and the ability to really, keep yourself going all the time. Having said that, it is something that is very positive because it makes you look out in the world always with fresh eyes and consider what might be adding value to your team, to your organization. So being versatile, really look right and left, not disregard the past, but reinvent the future all the time. I think that's one of the most important factors. And you're not alone. You can't be alone. You're not an island as a future leader, but you're part of a team, and collaboration is key. And as a team, achieving success is anyway much more fun than doing it on your own.
So thanks a lot for this super interesting conversation. We talked about a lot of super interesting topics like legal tech and cross-border regulatory compliance, leadership, company cultures, future, and advices to young talents. So thanks a lot for all your insights and for your time. I think our time is now over. And if you would like to add anything you would like to.
From my side, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you guys, for your time and interest. I had a good time. Thank you for that.
Same here. Thanks everyone for your attention. Thank you.
So thank you, Kristóf and Andrea, and thanks for the audience for their attention. And hope to see you again in our tomorrow programs in the Arzboni Legal Fest.
Thank you.
A very good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.